I am your host, Leah Dunlap, and you are listening to the Oracle on Purpose podcast, where we help intentional leaders clarify their purpose and next steps to create a work and life of significance. Welcome back to Oracle Live. I am Leah Dunlap, the Oracle on Purpose, and I'm here with a past guest to talk about how things have gone since she asked the Oracle some very important questions. So my guest is coming up. Her name is Megan Winkler. She is known as the Good Business Witch. And we had so much fun last time we talked. There was so much great energy. And I loved the fact that one of the things we did was have two very intuitive people have a conversation. And I really hope that that broke down one of those walls that I think people always feel like they should know everything or do everything themselves. And this conversation from our last visit hopefully blew the doors right off of that. And I am still really excited because I revisited her podcast episode, and I suggest you do as well. And when you do, when you look up Oracle on Purpose podcast, look for Megan Winkler's last podcast and pay attention around the 6:43 mark, where we dive into not only what Megan was up to, but why. So in a moment, I'm going to bring her on. I just want to make sure that for those of you watching, you know that you have the capacity to join us here in the room when we're doing our live broadcast. And also, if you feel like anything we talk about speaks to you as far as knowing where you are, what purpose your purpose is, and where you might be moving to next, and you'd like some assistance, you'd like some support, or maybe even just your next step, I highly recommend that you visit the Oracle on Purpose podcast and or join us by visiting the Purpose and Prosperity Roadmap.com and find out if you are actually on the right road to your own divine path to millions. And when you take the roadmap and you follow it along, it might lead you to the chance to understand where your unique life purpose fits into what you have to do next. So I invite you, if you are in that mode of wondering what you're doing, if anything that Megan says about like following your purpose or knowing your purpose sparks something inside of you, I want you to know that it is never too late to follow your purpose. No matter where you are or what you're doing, if you're not in full alignment, then you're not giving all that you have to give to the universe, and the universe isn't able to really help you thrive and live your best life. So don't wait, don't stop, don't think about it anymore. Go ahead, log in now if you want to while we're doing this to purposeandprosperityroadmap.com and download that article today so you can find out whether or not you're on your right path. All right. Thanks so much for waiting. I am excited to show you here in the room. Here she comes. Megan Winkler, known as I was just calling you the Divine Good Witch. The Good Business Witch. And so, Megan, I know when we spoke last, you told us a little bit about what you do, but some people are new to you and what you do. So why don't you share first who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, I'm Megan Winkler. Happy to be back. I'm also known as the Good Business Witch, and I am a virtual chief marketing officer for spiritual entrepreneurs. I'm that advisor who helps them market and sell their wonderful talents. And it's so rewarding. And the Good Business Witch name came up when I went back to school, second time being in grad school, and I'm working on my MBA.
Wow.
And yeah. So I started sharing tips and things I learned starting back in 2019 on the Good Business Witch podcast. And here we are today.
I love it. Podcasting. Shout out. Go check out our podcast. Fantastic. So last time you visited us, your question really got narrowed down to what is your purpose and are you aligned? Those are the questions that we had kind of floating around the room at the time. And I'm curious, the information that you received from the Oracle was pretty potent in the fact that it was pretty pointed to some moments in that video where you really kind of felt a deep awareness. And I think you even mentioned you felt the chills of validation when you were hearing some of these words. So I want to know, first off,
once you walked away from that session online, how did you take that information in and what did you do with it?
Yeah. So it was funny. I had to go back and re-listen to it because life has been crazy since then. I think life is always crazy though. So, but I remember the biggest takeaway for me in that session was the word liberation. And so I have just been carrying that with me and kind of looking at what does liberation mean, how is my purpose aligned with liberation, and kind of pursuing it that direction. And that has been just a really interesting journey for me, honestly.
Really? So can you give us some ideas or examples where knowing and thinking from that perspective of liberation maybe changed how you were kind of working or acting in the world?
Yeah, so it really hasn't changed my working, which is interesting. It has changed my being.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I think that might have been because I listened to the episode, and I was just laughing listening to it because I was like, oh yeah, the Oracle was being like very pointed and also very vague at the same time. And I think she just knew I needed to figure it out for myself, honestly. And since then, I've really been, not only pursuing my more formal education, but also really exploring the aspects of feminism and the history of women in our country, in our society, more in depth. I mean, like really digging into the language we use, just like as a society.
Ah,
It's been really fascinating, and my coach noticed it, and she's like, you're going through a lot of like really deep, hard stuff, and make
yeah.
sure you're providing support for yourself, and that you let me know how I can support you. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting because it felt like that was tied to the liberation aspect of
Mhm.
it, and
Yeah,
that knowledge can be liberating.
absolutely. And I remember, some of the things that stood out for me were the phrase, that helping people get liberated.
Hmm.
That there was this part of your purpose that was designed to kind of help others get liberated.
Yeah.
And it speaks to what you just said, of course, which is like the languaging we use and how you're, by example, then really
Mhm.
helping other people get liberated. One of the other things that stood out to me in reviewing it was that financial component. So
Mhm.
I'm curious to know how you have either incorporated that, and now
Mhm.
you mentioned the MBA, so I kind of had to chuckle in my own head, like, oh, maybe that's where that was coming in. But I remember when we talked about that, there
Mhm.
was the sense that what you are doing was kind of holding the financial aspect at bay. Has that
Mhm.
shifted
Mhm.
for you at all? Did that resonate for you, or have you kind of looked at that and made any changes around that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I around the same time that you and I spoke last, I think it had been like a month before you and I had spoke. I just decided, I was like, if someone wants to work with me, this is the minimum. Or, I have this very minimum package that it's like, this is my old price, but you get like a lot more scaled back. So really it was like valuing my time
Mm.
higher, which has been great. Well, since then, I've definitely, so I've been billing at higher prices, and my clients, when I'm getting referrals from people, getting people, coming in and saying, "Hey, I really want to work with you." It has that liberating feeling actually, because it is not a struggle right now. So
Wonderful.
overall, it was like raising my prices it felt very much like I was telling the universe, okay, here I am, I'm ready to do it.
Right, and
you
that's
know?
such a good point. Like, so often we think that we have to know the how,
Hmm.
when, most often we just need to know the what. Like, we
Yeah.
need to know what we're shifting, and the universe has our back. It will
Yeah.
figure out the how. And to that, one of the other lines that came that I made a note of was the phrase, "Still playing too small."
Hmm. Hmm.
How are you playing today? Do you feel like you've
Yeah.
kind of, it sounds like a little bit even from what you just said as far as like raising your prices, that you really are stepping into a bigger value of who you are and what
Yeah.
you have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been a huge shift for me as well, is that I just was finally like, you know what, F it, let's just do this. And so, I call myself a virtual CMO at this point, a chief marketing officer, because that's the kind of support that I've always provided my clients.
Mhm.
And anything with a smaller title, doesn't speak to the expertise that I bring to the room. So, I shifted that and really
Fantastic.
I said no to a few clients too, because I was like, no, this just does not align. So it's kind of like some overwhelming like badassery, if I can say that.
I some good stuff has happened. So I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
If this is one of those moments where I love that there's this place where we look back at, like you said, and you're not the first to say, like, sometimes I feel like the O is being purposely vague.
Yeah.
And I think when I share that with people, one of the ways I look at it is we need to grow, right? Like,
Mhm,
we
mhm.
can't we can't have somebody walk for us. Like, we
Right.
don't if our parents picked us up and moved our feet to make us walk, we would just keep falling down. So it's like
Right.
there's this, like, yes, you're capable of this, right? To
Mhm,
know, to
mhm.
encourage you towards something that is yours,
Yeah.
without giving you every step, oftentimes gives room for the
Mhm.
universe to do its magic, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like losing clients or letting go of clients from one aspect without
Mhm.
the insight about
Mhm.
your being in the place of liberation and playing bigger
Yeah.
could send you into a spiral, right? Like,
Yeah.
could send one person into a spiral if they lost someone in
Mhm.
their um of their clients. Then
Mhm.
they might feel like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, rather than this is working out exactly like it needs to,
Yeah.
so that I can have and hold space, as you said, for people that are
Mhm.
willing to pay you at the value that you're holding for yourself.
Mhm.
And then, of course, because when people send new people to you, you have to have room for them.
Right.
So it sounds as if a lot of these things kind of naturally evolved from that conversation.
Yeah.
If you look at this now and look back, what kind of value did you put on having that information and having that
Mhm.
conversation, when you did?
Yeah, I think it was for me so much of a confirmation that what I was doing was going in the right direction.
Mm,
Um, and that my decisions were, aligned with what I will eventually be doing, right? And so, I'm looking at, because I remember mentioning in the previous conversation where it was like, I feel like I love my work, but it's not necessarily my purpose. And the value of being in that conversation and having that kind of confirmation is that it's like, yeah, I'm on the right track. I can be building this wonderful business that I get a lot of enrichment and fulfillment out of, and also be pursuing my larger purpose in the outside world.
mhm.
It doesn't have to be either or, it can be both and,
Love it.
you know.
Yes.
So that
That
was hugely valuable.
Yeah, and that's something that people, I think, that are listening and watching, that this is one of those edges where people find themselves stuck,
Yeah.
is the concept of, well, I either have to do X or I have to do Y, or I have to put
Yeah.
all my energy over here or over there, and
Mhm.
not being able to see that everything we do can go towards fulfilling our purpose, and it doesn't mean that it's the end all be all place that that's
Right.
going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that for you, you can look back and see now, like, oh, these were places where that insight or that knowledge or that deepening of, affirmation, as you said,
Yeah.
allowed you to stay stronger in your choices, because
Mhm.
ultimately, that's all we are. We're just choice making machines. Like, we have
True.
opportunities that come to us, and
Yeah.
the better aligned we are with what our ultimate goal is and our purpose, as you said,
Yeah.
the more succinct and simple
Mhm.
the choices become.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you
Absolutely.
feel like that's true?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
I'm so glad. So tell us more about, like, you've got this now going underneath you. You've got some
Mhm.
steps you feel, it sounds like, really kind of supported and strong about what you're
Mhm.
doing next. So what is your big next vision for yourself, do you think?
I am not sure, but I'm so curious about it, is
Mhm.
what I'm really is what I'm really excited about, honestly, is the curiosity is certainly there. And I feel like I have such a wonderful foundation, and I'm expanding my business next year with a monthly membership program, because there's a lot of people who need help in what I do. And I think this is a fun new way to keep building that sustainable business. And I don't know. We'll just see. I graduate next year. So then I'll have all kinds of more alphabet soup behind my name, which is fun. And yeah, but it's just, there's so much joy in what I'm doing now. And there's so much lightness, kind of the lightness of being in my work. So I'm excited about what's coming next.
So one other thing that I wrote down when I was reviewing was reverence over responsibility. I remember
Mhm.
that was kind of poignant moment for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just listening to you now thinking, wow, there's a level of reverence, right? For
Mhm.
the curiosity.
Yeah.
How has that been interlaced? Do you
Mhm.
feel like that deepened? I know it was kind of towards the last end of our call, but it was just
Mhm.
such a moment watching back of
Yeah.
I saw you light up in like that
Yeah.
kind of connectedness to that word
Right.
reverence. How is that appearing right now in your life?
It's really fun, actually. It's so funny. I just listened to this the other day and I totally forgot about that. I listened to it on Monday, like 4 days ago. And what I see it, where I see it in my life is when my clients or even my daughter gets really stressed out,
Mm.
and I don't have to fix it, and it's okay that I can, with kind of that reverential, right, like mindset, like I can hold that space for them. I can create this sacred
Mm.
container for them to just vent or to stress out or lose their mind or whatever. But it's not necessarily about me fixing it. It's about
Nice.
them going through that journey. So.
Right. And I love that idea, like in holding that reverence, you get to
Mhm.
hold space, as you said,
Yeah.
and people get to be a part of this process. I think
Mhm.
for everyone listening, this is such a beautiful thing. There's so much grace
Mhm.
in holding space at that level where we understand that it's not like kind of back to what you said, not either or. It's
Yeah.
both and like, yeah, we can lose. Hello, everyone. Knock, knock. We're all human. We came here to be human, and human behavior can
Mhm.
look lots of different ways. Human
Yeah.
emotion can look lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And the journey itself is always beautiful. That there's
Yeah.
always this place where things are working themselves out, things are making their way through the quagmire that is life.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I'm glad to hear that piece is also being felt and
Yeah.
activated in you, because I know that with that, then other people that you work with get to have um, they get to have that too. They get to have
Right.
that reference, which I think is so important in the
Yeah.
world today.
Thank
Well,
you.
I would love to know if people are out there listening to this and
Mhm.
thinking, like, what would you say to them, whether it was me or someone else, like as far as like, what does it mean to have this kind of guidance? And
Mhm.
what would you say to someone who feels like maybe they're just a little stuck, or
Mhm.
they're really off track on like, am I
Mhm.
doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this my purpose? Am
Yeah.
I going the right way?
Mhm.
What would you tell them about this experience?
I would tell them that it's so wonderful to have such intuitive and also grounded guidance, right? Kind of that confirmation that I was talking about earlier, to understand that it's like, oh, someone from the outside of, your kind of personal ecosystem is seeing it and understands that there is a longer path that we're on, right? And just having that confirmation is so invaluable, because especially, anybody that's running an independent business, or like, out there striking new ground and being revolutionary in their own way, it's
Mhm.
really hard to know, you know if what you're doing is the right thing. So having that confirmation is just so valuable. And if you're on the fence, just jump in, man. This is cool.
Well, thank you so much for coming back and sharing your reflections on our time together and where you are. I'm so happy to see that you took what you were given and how it's playing out for you. I always find it so fascinating to see kind of that back end result, which a lot of people don't see if they watch me share with people. So thank you so much for taking the time to stop back by with us. As I mentioned to everybody, be sure you go to the podcast, watch the original podcast and this follow-up. As Megan just said, you may see things that we didn't even see as we're talking, because I think it's always interesting how our different perceptions color kind of what we see and what we pick up on. So thank you again so much for being here. I wish you the best of luck. And if you or someone you know is looking for a chief marketing officer, here she is. Tell them to find the good business witch, Megan Winkler. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. So you heard it from Megan. If you are looking for additional support and guidance, I would be so thrilled to share some of the Oracle's guidance with you. You can find me on oracleonpurpose.com, Oracle on Purpose podcast on YouTube and other social media places, platforms, and podcast areas, Apple as well as Spotify. And of course, if you really just want to take a moment and find out if you are on the path that will lead you to your highest and best, then you can go to the purposeandprosperityroadmap.com and get your own download to find out whether or not you're ready to move forward. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Leah Dunlap, the Oracle on Purpose. Remember, you are here on purpose. Thanks for tuning in to the Oracle on Purpose show. If you found value in this episode, we'd appreciate you leaving a comment. Also, you can subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't yet. If you'd like to get clear on your highest vision and next steps, go to oracleonpurpose.com. See you next week.